Now I'm going to be talking about the importance of traveling. I just got back from San Diego for spring break, and I was there visiting my aunt, and I decided to kind of talk about that because I think she played kind of an indirect important role in how I saw beyond the limit, and that's what traveling is about. So in case I haven't or you haven't seen the other videos, as I said before, I come from Peru and Lima, and you don't really have an overseas vision of what to do next, right? There's a typical approach. I've seen this in India. I have friends from India, or maybe other developing countries as well, where happens a lot in South America. The typical path is you finish an engineering degree. I was robotics, and then you have to kind of like find a regular office job in industry or whatever, and you don't actually do any research or development at all. You're really just like buying and selling machinery. Or you're not really doing any engineering. You're doing other stuff as if you're some sort of salesman or whatever. And that happens a lot in Peru, and it's not something that I envision myself doing. Maybe because I'm not really good at selling. I don't have an interest in money a lot. And I'm not really good with money overall. So what happened, which was very fortunate, was that a year after my first year, after my first year in my undergrad, my aunt had offered me a gift. So she said, I'm going to pay you a free trip. She kind of she's wealthy, so she has some money. I'm very fortunate of that in that case. So it was like something completely unexpected. She said, I'm going to pay you a trip for you to come visit me. And she lived in San Diego in California. And I was like, all right, let's do this. And initially the offer was at the beginning, but I'm glad that I waited for a while. As a beginning, as in just after getting into college. But I was too busy, and like my mindset was just only studying and like cramming in bugs and equations and all that, and trigonometry and physics and calculus, whatever. So I waited the year, and I finally had my vacation turn for like 3 months, and I went and visited my aunt for, I think it was 2 weeks. So I flew to California. As I said before, it wasn't my first time in America. I lived in DC for like 6 years when I was a kid. But flying to California was completely life-changing for me because I was never there, and I always dreamed of going there in some sense. I think I've mentioned this before in one video in the About Me section. And going there just created this urge in me to think that I could do something else with my degree. So I want you to think, if you've ever traveled before in another place outside of your city, has that urge ever come inside you of saying, I have to leave this place and I have to find another place that's better for me, or a place that I feel that I fit in? And that was California for me. I went to San Diego, and I remember that the first time I went as a kid, I couldn't really do much. And the first time that I went, I was 16, so we just I did some touring and all that, and as in like my aunt drove me around. She was like, okay, this is like the mall. We went shopping, and I was like, oh my god, whatever. The people here are amazing. They're friendly. I was like 16, and I was like, oh, like the girls here are really pretty, whatever, and the lifestyle just seemed so different and less stressful than in Peru. And my mindset was completely different back then, and it just changed my perspective a lot. And I also go there, and I play with my cousins who were maybe like 4 or 6. I go to theme parks like Legoland, Knott's Berry Farm that they call like Camp Snoopy, and I went to like the roller coasters and all that, and it was fun, and that was like the first exposure of California, and I didn't do as much as I wanted to. And it was just like the first time that I said, okay, there's something else, something beyond the limit. I went back to Peru. I kept on studying and everything, continued with my courses and everything. But it was thanks to that first trip that I actually convinced my uncle that he could take me to Caltech, just like to see Caltech, to see the campus, and he drove me there. So we drove from San Diego to Pasadena, and it was like 3 hours, I think, or 2.5. And we drove there, and we spent the entire day there, and And my uncle so my aunt is related to me biologically. My uncle is my aunt's husband. He's American. My aunt's Peruvian. And he actually took the time, even though he's not blood related, to actually like tour with me and take a tour around Caltech. And he'd say, "Yeah, this is my nephew. He's coming from Peru, whatever." I remember there was a lot of interesting stuff going on there because I take the regular undergrad visiting tour, and there were two things that I really liked. First, I really liked the campus, and I really liked the vibe at Caltech. I'm not at Caltech now, but just like going and looking at the university seemed so amazing. You could feel that everyone was so into research and studying. It was amazing. And the second thing that kind of I remember just hit me straight away was when I asked for financial aid to the guy who was like giving the tours. He said, "We're sorry, we don't have any financial aid for international students like you, who would potentially be a transfer given that you're already in your first year of college." And I felt pretty bad about that because there was no way I could get into Cal. Even if I get accepted, there was no way I could afford Caltech. So I'll talk more about the pros and cons of, as I'll say, intense realism and delusion. So it wouldn't be good for me if I'd say, all right, I'll just like study a lot and maybe get into Caltech and they'll find a way to like get financial aid and anything. But at the end it won't happen, right? Because he just told me and I read the paper and everything, no financial aid for transfer students. Okay, fair enough. But then, even though I went through the whole campus tour and I saw the buildings, I saw like the Feynman statue over there. They told me like the myths about rubbing his nose, that all the physicists would do that. I got really inspired. I bought like some T-shirts and all that. Just going there. If you ever have the chance to go take a vacation in America or any other place in the world, and there's a university campus close, I really suggest that you should go and just walk around, see how it is. Just explore the place. Explore it as if like you're exploring a theme park or like New York City, whatever. Just go around, take pictures, like kind of observe the students, what they do, try to overhear their conversations. It really gives you more perspective compared to the limited type of conversations that you have in your current institution. So in my current institution, when I was in Peru, since it was like we were almost like all dudes, we would talk about, we would always talk about girls. We would always talk about video games. We'd always talk about maybe soccer. I wasn't really into soccer, but he'd talk about soccer. But it wasn't like after, and of course, like this was leisure time talk, and of course we talk about the subject, about physics, math, like how did you solve this problem, whatever, yes, no. But it didn't really go more from there, right? But after that trip, I remember going back, and I started to talk to my friends about a lot of other stuff. I tell them, hey, I really saw this university, it's really awesome. I think I'm gonna apply to like a transfer. I'm gonna just give it a shot and see how it goes. And eventually you'll like create this kind of cascade effect. You'll have your friends kind of get into that too, and they might want to jump into that train too and say, okay, maybe I want to apply to grad school as well. And that's always good to kind of have a group. If you're doing it by yourself, it's harder, but it's doable. When you have a group of people who also want to do it with you, that's just like way more awesome. So traveling definitely helps you a lot. Now I just feel so happy that when I went back and I talked to my aunt, I just said, hey, I'm really thankful that because of that first trip and then that second trip, when I went 2 years later after that, I got my international driver's license, and that trip I had to pay, and I just drove by myself to like UCLA, Caltech, UC San Diego, and I was just like exploring like all over the place. Actually, I didn't go to UCLA. I went to UCSD, UC San Diego, and Caltech. And I was like all over the place, just taking pictures and getting in the buildings, like sneaking in, talking to professors randomly, setting up meetings if I could. That's the type of attitude you should try to have if you want to kind of like make the jump, because it helps you a lot to just like stay focused, and you can see beyond the spectrum of stuff that don't happen in your country or at your institution. And I told my aunt, I'm really happy that you did that in the first place, because that's what kind of motivated me to get outside. And now, instead of going back home to Peru, just like in other spring breaks, now I'm going back to Santa Barbara, which is where I live. And Alan got sad. He's crying right now. and that was pretty awesome. So you're not expected to have someone to pay trips for you, but if you have, you don't have to suggest it, but you can pay a trip for yourself and say, hey, you know what, uncle, cousin, whatever, friend, can I visit you? Whatever, can I stay at your place for a while? And you pay the trip by yourself. Try to do it. If you don't have the means, try to travel maybe some other place, like inside your country, another city. See another university. Sometimes there are certain countries where you don't even have to leave the country, but in another city they'll have a university that's like way more advanced. Try to do that, and it's not that expensive. Or try to look for small like traveling grants, maybe that they offer in your university. Or try to convince your parents, maybe, right? Instead of just like paying you for a trip to have fun and not do anything, like a week in whatever, in Cabo or Europe. Spend that money to go. I don't know. Maybe you want to go to Harvard, right? Just like a week, stay at Boston, at a hotel, just wander around Harvard a couple of days. Maybe drive to MIT. Maybe visit New York City too. That's kind of like close to out of Boston, but those type of stuff. So that's the idea. Traveling basically just like expands your horizon intellectually, socially too, and that's the main point of this video. So in case anything's missing, you guys should just like write that in the comments too. All right, thanks.